Hey guys, tonight we step into the dark, damp silence of a prehistoric cave, where your breath fogs against stone and every sound seems to echo into forever. You open your eyes, and for a moment you're not even sure whether it's morning or night. The cave doesn't really care. A thin stripe of pale light leaks through a crack high above, dust motes swirling like tiny ghosts, reminding you that yes, another day has begun. And here you are, in the middle of it, wrapped in fur that smells faintly of smoke and wet earth. You blink slowly, adjusting to the gloom. The cave floor is cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones until you feel like the stone itself. You shift, feeling the ache of muscles stiff from sleeping on uneven rock. Outside, the world waits, maybe with food, maybe with teeth. You probably won't survive this, but hey, let's give it a go. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first full inhale catches a scent, old smoke. The fire has long gone out, but ash clings to the corners of the hearth you built from piled stones. Fire is tricky. It keeps you alive. But it demands constant care. A single lapse, a single rainstorm sneaking in, and you're plunged into cold darkness. Archaeologists say controlled fire dates back at least 400,000 years, maybe earlier, though historians still argue whether those earliest blazes were carefully maintained or just happy accidents sparked by lightning. Either way, you're here now, with only wisps of smoke to remind you how fragile warmth can be. You stretch, groaning softly, bones cracking in a way that makes you think, half-jokingly, about whether prehistoric chiropractors existed. They didn't, though someone probably would have tried smacking you with a stick to fix your posture. Your fingers trail the cave walls as you rise. They're damp, rough, and pocked with tiny holes where water carved its patient pathways. It's a reminder that nature has more time than you ever will. Your stomach rumbles, loud enough that for a second you think an animal might be nearby. Hunger is your alarm clock. Always has been, always will be. You lick your lips, dry and cracked. Water. That's what you need first. The faint drip 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 of a stalactite deeper inside the cavern teases your ears. You know the way by heart now. On your hands and knees, you shuffle toward it, careful not to slip on slick rock. Each drop lands in a shallow stone hollow, not much bigger than your cupped palm. You tilt your head and catch a few, the cold trickle shocking against your tongue. Sweet relief. It's barely enough, though, and you wonder how early humans managed water before pottery and leather pouches. Some used gourds, some carved wooden vessels, others just followed rivers religiously. You don't have that luxury. Your river is a slow drip, the cave mouth yawns ahead. Outside, dawn stirs. You creep closer, hesitant. The light is stronger now, casting the entrance in pale gold. It looks inviting. But you know better. Outside is where things with sharper teeth and faster legs wait. Inside is where hunger waits. You're always choosing between risks, fangs or emptiness. As you step nearer, your breath condenses in the cold morning air. You glance down and notice faint markings on the stone floor, scuff lines from where you dragged branches, footprints that already look older than you feel. You think of other humans, long gone, who might have sat right where you are, rubbing sticks together, muttering prayers you'll never understand. Archaeologists sometimes uncover charred bones in caves like these and debate, were they cooking meals, or something darker, like ritual cannibalism? Historians still argue whether those bones tell stories of survival or ceremony. You shiver, partly from the chill, partly from the thought, and then, you laugh quietly to yourself. Great, now I've creeped myself out before breakfast. Humor's a flimsy shield, but it's better than silence. The light outside grows brighter. Birds call, their notes sharp against the air. You realize you've survived another night. Against odds, against hunger, against your own doubts, you've woken again. That counts for something. You rub your arms, tugging the fur tighter. It's patchy, stitched together with sinew, stiff in places where smoke and damp conspired to harden it. Caveman couture at its finest. Somewhere down the timeline, fashion will become silk robes, tailored suits, and sneakers that cost too much. Right now, fashion is whatever keeps your skin from freezing. Still, if there were a prehistoric runway, you'd strut proudly in your smoky, moth-eaten ensemble. The day stretches ahead, unknown and dangerous. You press your palm against the stone wall, steadying yourself. It's smooth in one patch, as if countless other hands touched the same spot before stepping out. You feel connected to them, people you'll never meet, who struggled just like you. Who woke up each day and asked, "What now?" You take a final breath of cave air, tinged with smoke and stone. The world outside hums faintly with life. It's time to step forward. You edge closer to the mouth of the cave, the strip of daylight widening until it becomes a doorway into something far less predictable than stone. Your throat is dry again already, even though you just sipped from the stalactite's stingy drip. Thirst has a way of ruling you. It shapes every choice, every slow crawl, every time you hesitate to wander too far. Without water, all the berries, roots, or meat in the world won't matter, so you duck lower, stooping to avoid scraping your head against the jagged rim, and step into the pale morning. The air outside feels shockingly fresh, almost rude in its brightness. You blink, adjusting to the rush of colors after the muted darkness of the cavern, green mosses glistening with dew. Brown dirt glimmering with wet patches, the faint shimmer of a distant puddle. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth, so you begin scanning for water as though your eyes might summon it closer. That puddle is too far, probably just rain collected in a dip. You'd risk predators getting there, and predators love early risers. Better to trust the slow, reliable stalactite inside for now, even if it feels like licking condensation from a bus window. Not that you know what a bus is yet, but trust me, you're not missing out. You wander a few cautious steps. The ground squishes underfoot, dark soil sucking at your heels. You know streams must run somewhere beyond the ridge, you've heard them faintly when the wind carried the sound. In caves across Europe, archaeologists have found traces of ancient humans living near fresh springs, because no one survives long without water. Historians still argue whether people settled permanently near rivers or just camped temporarily, moving as soon as the water supply dried up. You imagine whole families playing a grim version of musical chairs, except instead of music, it's just water vanishing when the weather changes. Your hand brushes the rough surface of a rock wall as you walk, steadying yourself. A tiny trickle runs down its face. You lean closer, daring, and press your lips against the cool wetness. It tastes metallic, earthy, not exactly delicious but enough to ease the sandpaper feeling in your throat. You cup your hand to catch more, but most of it slips away, dripping down your wrist. You laugh under your breath. Prehistoric hydration technology, human hand edition. You wish for something to store it in. Maybe a hollow gourd, maybe a clay pot. But those belong to futures you don't yet have. Still, humans figured this out eventually. Some of the oldest known water containers were made from animal stomachs or bladders. Cleaned out and tied with strips of sinew. Not glamorous, but practical. A quirky tidbit for you, some desert nomads even used ostrich eggs as canteens. Crack the top carefully, drain the egg, then fill it with water and seal it. Congratulations, you're carrying life in a giant breakfast shell, but for now, all you have are your hands. You slurp noisily, then wipe your face with the back of your wrist. A bird scolds you from a branch overhead, as if to say you're wasting effort. Its feathers are slick from last night's rain, and when it shakes, droplets sprinkle like tiny jewels. You wish you could collect those too. Every drop matters, you crouch, cupping both hands against the stone again. The stream is so faint that it tests your patience. Waiting for water is like waiting for fire to catch, slow, frustrating, and humbling. You remind yourself that even with all the struggles, you're luckier than some. In certain caves, water never drips at all. Archaeologists once discovered hollow depressions carved deliberately into the floor of dry caves, basins designed to catch the rare condensation when humid air rolled in. Were those clever inventions, or just desperate scratches from thirsty people? Historians still argue, but the image makes you grateful for every trickle. Your stomach growls again, sharper now. It's never just one need, thirst and hunger arrive together like rude neighbors banging on your door. You ignore the pang, focusing instead on the coolness seeping through your hands. You sip again, slower this time, pretending it's enough. The forest hums softly in the distance. A stream must be out there, somewhere. You picture bending over, splashing your face, gulping until your belly sloshes like a wineskin. But to get there, you'd need to cross the open ground. That means predators could see you. Big cats, maybe wolves. Humans weren't always apex predators, sometimes you were just a snack with legs. You sit back against the stone, wiping dampness from your chin, and mutter, "Breakfast of champions." Sarcasm helps, it keeps the silence from pressing too heavily on your chest. The sun climbs higher, burning away the mist. You know water will become scarcer as the day warms. For now, though, the droplets keep forming, one stubborn bead at a time, like the cave itself wants you alive. You close your eyes briefly, savoring that thought. The cave gives, stingy but steady. Maybe survival isn't about conquering nature, maybe it's about listening when nature whispers. You smile at the absurd idea of a cave rooting for you, but hey, when you're thirsty enough, you'll take any ally. The drip continues, steady and eternal, marking time in a world without clocks. You lean forward again, patient as stone. You rest your forehead against the stone lip and step out because hunger doesn't negotiate. It nudges you like an impatient ant. Moss cools your ankles, the world too bright for smoky cave couture. Rain washed everything clean, leaves shine, bark steams, the air tastes green. Foraging is listening with your eyes. You keep low, panning for what the night shook loose. A bramble snags your wrist and, there, beneath it, dull blueberries hide like shy beads. Shiny fruit taught you caution, you press one to your tongue, wait, then bite. Tart first, then soft, like the cave trying to sweeten its personality. Your stomach wants to sprint, but memory sets the route. You circle, wood sorrel with lemon whisper leaves. Plantain rosettes by a hoofprint, by the swale, cattails waving like flags. Their rhizomes promise starch if you're willing to earn it. Archaeologists keep finding this very menu at old campsites: charred nutshells, berry seeds, and starch dust ground into stone, the mainstream fact of human survival hidden in mud. You kneel by the cattails and push your hands into brown water. Cold clamps your wrists, silt slurps your fingers. The root comes free with a sigh and the comic dignity of a swamp carrot. You scrape it with yesterday's flint, chew until the fibers release slow sweetness. Better than nothing and slightly worse than anything you can imagine. You grin anyway, nutrition behind terrible first impressions. Like people but with fewer opinions, a jay heckles from an alder. The bird is only a gossip, but gossips feed bigger ears. You pause, count to 20, hear only wind and a distant woodpecker, then move again, placing your feet in the quiet between sounds. On a sunny shoulder you pause before a shrub jeweled with brave red berries. They look like a painting of deliciousness, which is exactly why you do not touch them. Let birds run the first experiment. If they feast and don't roll downhill by noon, you'll revisit. For now you invent the law of look but don't snack and appoint a pinecone as legal counsel. Joke 1 achieved, your digging stick, a dignified name for a tough branch, finds a patch of soft earth. Little tubers pop free like the cave-dripped marbles into the soil. Dirt moons your nails. You rub them on your wrap and stash the tubers in the reed sling you braided during yesterday's rain. When evening comes and the ash forgives you, you'll roast them until skins char and centers turn mealy and kind. Remember the hearth's moodiness? You plan to charm it. Under a peel of dead bark, you uncover 3 pale grubs folded like commas. You don't want them, which isn't the same as not needing them. Pride tilts down 1 notch, you taste one. It is oddly buttery, nut adjacent, and offensively wiggly. You declare it fine cuisine and promise never to speak of it again. Joke 2, recorded for posterity, immediately suppressed. By late morning a rumor of sweetness threads the air. Bees. You don't chase any single one, you walk the scent, letting it thicken as you weave along a game trail. The Hadza of East Africa partner with a honey-guide bird, the bird chatters, humans follow, everyone eats. Your birds freeload, but your nose is stubborn. Behind a fallen oak a seam of comb bulges with amber. You smear damp moss on your cheeks like a ridiculous helmet and wave a smoky twig saved from the hearth's last good mood. The bees complain, but they retreat, and you lever out a chunk of comb the size of your palm. Honey streaks your knuckles, wax clings under your nails, your heart does a small, undignified dance. Honey is more than candy. Mixed with wax it waterproofs baskets, it soothes scrapes, and it buoys spirits after mornings like this. In graves thousands of years old, jars of honey have been found still edible. Bees work out living the names of the people who loved it. You lick your knuckles and feel the sugar sheath your nerves like a warm glove. The trail dips toward a creeklet, and the ground tells a story. Sharp-edged slots pressed fresh into mud, beads of water shining in each print, dear before dawn. You skirt the choke point where brush squeezes the track because you enjoy having bones arranged in the default order. Historians still argue whether early foragers used slow burns to guide animals or whether such corridors formed mostly by habit and chance. At the creeklet you indulge the morning's fantasy. You kneel and drink like someone kissing a miracle. Cold water tastes of stone and sky. You splash your face. You fill your sling with cattail strips and tuck hazelnuts into the crook of your elbow. Across northern coasts archaeologists find mounds of burned hazelnut shells from the Mesolithic, whole feasts of roasted nuts. The historical version of snack night, on the walk back you crush a sprig of pine between your palms. Resin stings, then settles into a clean sharpness that would make a future candle seller weep. You dab a little on the reddest sting on your cheek. Tree medicine, sampled without a copay. Joke 3, you are both the pharmacy and the customer service line. Birdsong stitches the silence closed behind you. The cave appears where the hill folds in on itself, cool and familiar, the way dusk fits over day. Your arms carry the morning's argument for hope, roots, nuts, a smear of honey, a palm of leaves that taste like lemon and memory. You haven't conquered anything. You tuned yourself to a place and the place hummed back. Inside, your breath turns visible again. You set the tubers by the hearth, nuts in a niche above ant height, honey wrapped in moss and placed high like an altar to sugar. 2 sips from the creek join the stalactite's patient bowl. You stroke the ash and talk to it like a sleepy friend. Then you lean against the wall that holds warmth longest and let your shoulders sag. A final thought pads through. People have done this for longer than your mind can stretch. Historians still argue whether the tidy men hunt, women gather ever described the whole picture. Burials with hunting tools beside female bones hint it was always more complicated. What you know here is simpler. You listened. You learned. You fed yourself without becoming somebody else's lunch. The pile of tubers and nuts waits at your side, but hunger nudges you toward something sharper. Food without tools is like gossip without words, it just doesn't spread. You glance at the chipped edge of your flint shard, dull from yesterday's scraping. Time to upgrade. You shuffle toward the flatter stones near the cave's edge, where morning light helps you see tiny veins in the rock. One piece catches your eye, a chunk of flint, gray with hints of glassy brown. It almost winks at you, as if daring you to break it. You pick it up and set it against a harder rock. Deep breath. Then, clack. A chip splinters away, sharp enough to shave a whisper of skin. You jerk your hand back with a hiss. Congratulations, you've invented both technology and the world's first paper cut. The air smells faintly of stone dust. You test the edge again, gentler this time. The flake glints with promise. Somewhere in Africa, archaeologists uncovered Oldowan tools, 2 million years old, shaped by hands just as clumsy and hopeful as yours. Some say the first flakes weren't even planned, just happy accidents when one rock smacked another. Historians still argue whether those first toolmakers knew what they were doing or just thought, cool, sharp thing, let's keep it. You squat and try napping again. Clack. Clack. Tiny shards spray your lap, stinging like mean little insects. Your palms redden. You fumble, you curse under your breath, you laugh at your own lack of finesse. If there were a prehistoric YouTube, your blooper reel would have gone viral. But slowly, after half an hour, you hold a jagged flake that could actually slice through sinew or split reeds. The quirky truth. Some early stone tools were so symmetrical, so carefully crafted, that archaeologists wonder if they were partly decorative. Were these our ancestors' pocket knives, or their first attempts at art? The symmetry debate lives on, like an unsolved riddle carved in stone. You look at your own tool, asymmetrical and clunky, and snort. Definitely not art. Functional, maybe. Ugly, absolutely. You put the flake to work right away, stripping bark from a branch to make a digging stick. The sound is satisfying, rasp, rasp, as fibers peel back. The stick feels sturdier in your hands, no longer just a branch but an extension of your will. Humans have always loved that feeling, turning nature into something that obeys. It's why we keep inventing, keep tinkering, keep breaking rocks to see what hides inside. Your stomach growls, as if to say, great speech, now where's the food? You grin and spear one of the tubers with the sharpened stick, pretending you're at some prehistoric 5-star restaurant. Tonight's special, you whisper, mud potato on a stick. The fire pit stares back at you, empty and cold. You sigh. The ember hunt begins. Sometimes you carry a coal from day to day, nursing it like a fragile child. Sometimes, like now, you're stuck starting from scratch. You set 2 dry sticks together, bowing them back and forth until smoke curls up. Your arms ache, sweat drips, and the coal stubbornly resists. For a terrifying second, you think it's all for nothing. But then, a glow. Tiny, precious. You blow gently, coaxing flame into brittle grass. Fire answers you with a crackle. You roast the tuber, turning it clumsily over the flame. The skin blackens, curls. When you bite, steam escapes, scalding your tongue. You yelp, drop it, then laugh at yourself, chewing anyway. It tastes smoky, earthy, slightly like dirt, but it's warm. Warmth makes everything better. Even a mediocre root becomes a victory feast when it doesn't break your teeth. Your thoughts wander as you chew. Somewhere, long before cities or kings, people sat just like this, smoke in their eyes, ash on their fingers, pride swelling over a half-burned root. Tools were survival, but also confidence. They turned helpless hunger into action. The cave echoes with your crunching. You notice scratches on the stone nearby, accidental or intentional. You trace them with your finger, wondering, did another human sit here once, sharpening a tool exactly like yours? Were they any better at it? Did they also burn their tongues on roots? Historians still argue whether these scratches we find were practice marks, symbols, or just the cave's way of tricking us with patterns. You settle back, tools by your side, smoke curling into your fur wrap. You hold up the flake, tilt it toward the light and grin. Ugly or not, it's yours. Your first weapon, your first invention, your first promise to the day. The flint shard rests beside you, edges dulled from scraping bark, but your attention drifts to the gnawing cold in your shoulders. The cave has moods, and today its draft sneaks like fingers along your spine. Fire warms the air but doesn't hug your skin. You need something that clings tighter, softer, fur, hide, warmth stitched into shape. You paw through the meager bundle you've collected, strips of deer hide stiff from last week's smoke, a fox pelt still faintly red, sinew cords twisted from gut. Primitive sewing kit, prehistoric runway. You drape the fox fur across your lap and sigh. If anyone hosted Stone Age Fashion Week, you'd stomp proudly down the runway in an ensemble called I Hope This Keeps Me Alive. You tug the deer hide closer, fumbling with an awl chipped from bone. It's crude, but the point pricks clean holes through the skin. You loop sinew, tug tight, loop again. Stitches crooked enough to make any tailor weep, but you remind yourself, warmth doesn't care about symmetry. Somewhere, archaeologists found scraps of needles carved from bird bone at least 50,000 years old. Imagine the patience, threading sinew through a hole that tiny without modern glasses. Historians still argue whether sewing began as purely functional or if our ancestors already craved decoration, tiny shells and beads stitched just to sparkle. You hold the hide closer. The smell hits you, smoky, earthy. Tinged with the faint musk of the animal it once belonged to. Not exactly fresh laundry. You wrinkle your nose, then chuckle. In some alternate future, luxury brands will charge fortunes for this same rustic aroma, calling it eau de Pleistocene. Joke 1, congratulations, you've invented cologne. The work continues, slow as dripping water. You pinch the edges, pierce, thread, tug. A rhythm builds, almost meditative. Outside, crows gossip from tree to tree, but the cave muffles their voices. Your hands sting from friction. Each knot of sinew ties you a little more firmly to survival. When you finally drape the stitched fur around your shoulders, it doesn't fit, too wide here, too tight there. But it traps heat. That's enough. You crouch by the fire and let sparks lick the fur's edge. Not close enough to burn, just near enough for smoke to roll over it. Smoke kills fleas, drives off the little crawlers that make sleep a misery. Quirky fact, smoke treatment for hides is as old as fire itself, and some indigenous cultures still practice it today. The scent is sharp, heavy, but you breathe deeper, calmer, wrapped in your smoky second skin. The cave's light shifts and you glance upward. A thin shaft of sun cuts across the wall, landing on a patch of old soot. You run your fingers across it. The smudge transfers to your fingertips, black and silky. Without thinking, you streak it across your cheek like war paint. Your reflection in a puddle shows nothing dramatic, but you grin anyway. Clothes and markings, armor not just for skin, but for spirit. Historians still argue whether early cave people decorated themselves only for ritual or simply because self-expression is as human as hunger. You stretch your legs toward the fire. The new fur creaks stiffly, but warmth pools in your chest and belly. The ache in your muscles eases. For a fleeting second, you almost feel decadent, lounging in your handmade cloak. Chewing roasted tubers, ash flecking your chin. If a future historian saw you now, they'd probably jot down, specimen demonstrates surprisingly smug behavior for someone one bad storm away from hypothermia. Joke 2, you invent the first Yelp review of your own life. The warmth fuels new thoughts. Maybe next time you'll trim the hide thinner, stitch with finer sinew, even shape sleeves. The idea makes you smile. Innovation is just one failure away from brilliance. That's how humanity trudged forward, patching, fixing, trying again. A gust of wind pushes into the cave, smoke trailing. You clutch the fur tighter and watch the embers scatter tiny orange sparks. Outside, the world cools quickly even though the sun still hangs. Evening whispers its arrival. The cloak smells strongly now, fur, smoke, you. Not perfect, but personal. You lean back, the wall hard against your shoulder, and let the cloak settle. Warmth hugs you at last. You whisper into the air, better than freezing. The cave says nothing, but the silence feels like agreement. Joke 3 slips in quietly, if this is the Stone Age, at least I'm dressed for it. The warmth of your stitched hide lingers, but curiosity tugs you deeper into the cave. Hunger and cold are urgent, yes, but another need nips at the edges of your mind, meaning. Humans have never been content with just surviving. You want to see something, to leave a trace, to wonder at marks that outlive you. You take a burning twig from the fire and hold it high. Shadows stretch like creatures along the jagged walls. Deeper you go, air dampening, the smell shifting from smoke to wet stone. Water drips steadily, plink, plink, a rhythm older than your heartbeat. Then you see them. At first faint, then undeniable, handprints smudged into the wall, palms spread wide, fingers splayed. Some small, some large. A chorus of ghosts pressing their presence into the rock. You place your hand against one. It almost fits. Were these warnings? Rituals? Or just a prehistoric version of I was here? Historians still argue whether cave markings served practical functions, like maps of hunting grounds, or whether they were purely spiritual. You wonder if the truth lies in between, a doodle that turned sacred simply because someone cared enough to repeat it. Your twig's glow reveals spirals etched deeper into the rock. Circles within circles, looping endlessly. You tilt your head, trying to decode. Was this an early calendar, a prayer, or simply boredom carved during a long rainstorm? Archaeologists in France found caves lined with such spirals and dots, some carefully layered. As if generations added to them. The quirky tidbit, certain markings even look like half-finished tic-tac-toe boards, though sadly no fossils of X's and O's have been recovered. You lean closer, breath fogging the surface. Your fingertip traces a spiral's groove, rough under skin. You close your eyes, imagining the hand that carved it. Did they crouch like you, heart pounding in the dark? Did they whisper to the wall, hoping someone, or something, listened? A laugh bubbles out of you, soft but real. Joke 1, great, my landlord left graffiti. The cave seems to hum around you, the echoes playing tricks. You imagine chanting, drums, the stamp of feet. Firelight flickering across walls filled with beasts drawn in ochre, bison, horses, mammoths. In some real caves, they painted animals in motion, multiple legs overlapping like frames of a cartoon. Historians still argue whether these were hunting spells, teaching tools, or simply ancient comics. Your torch spits sparks. You sit down on the cool stone, staring at the handprints again. They feel both personal and universal. These were people. They coughed, they laughed, they scraped their knees. And still, they wanted to leave more than bones behind. You rub soot on your palm and press it to a bare patch of wall. When you pull away, your mark joins the silent crowd. It feels silly, almost childish, but also thrilling. You've declared, I exist. A drip of water hits your shoulder, startling you. You glance up and see tiny mineral curtains hanging from the ceiling. They glisten, catching the torchlight like beads. Beautiful, fragile. Centuries in the making. You whisper, nice decor, because joke 2 is obligatory. The torch shrinks, flame nibbling down toward your fingers. You backtrack carefully, following your memory of turns. The handprints linger in your vision, like afterimages. By the time you see the orange glow of your hearth, your chest feels both heavier and lighter. You settle near the fire, cloak snug, flint blade at your side. Behind you, the wall is alive with marks. You grin wryly. Future archaeologists might stumble here, scratch their heads, and debate whether your smudged handprint was a masterpiece or just bad aim. Historians still argue, after all. Joke 3 slips out. Imagine someone 20,000 years from now, writing a dissertation on my terrible wall art. You chuckle, the fire crackling along with you. Survival is meat and fur and water, yes. But it's also this, the urge to mark, to dream, to make the cave more than just stone. The first warning is a cool ribbon of air that snakes across your ankles and slips under your stitched hide. The second is the light, pale a moment ago, suddenly bruised. You step toward the mouth of the cave, and the sky has put on a darker face. Clouds fold over the ridge like thick animal pelts, the trees hush, holding their breath. One fat drop smacks the stone in front of you, then another on your cheek, cold as a dare. You retreat, gathering what matters, the reed bundle you left near the entrance, a fist of dry grass, your flint, the precious honey wrapped in damp moss. The cave swallows you back, and the world outside exhales a long, wet roar. Rain pours like it's trying to teach the ground a lesson. Water stripes the entrance, shivering sheets slanting in the wind. Thunder rolls up the valley and through your ribs, a slow drum you feel more than hear. You set the reeds at your side and draw the cloak tighter, grateful for smoke-cured fur. The cave's breath turns damp, walls bead with 1,000 glittering tears. Fire sulks, but you coax it with patience, tucking dry grass under the blackened sticks, feeding thin twigs until a lick of flame agrees to live. Time shrinks to small tasks. Add a twig, turn the tuber, nudge the ember back from the edge of extinction. Your ears learn the storm's grammar, hard drumming when the wind veers, softer patter when it tires, sudden rattles when drops find the stalactites and throw tiny silver beads into your bowls. Minutes puddle, every one seems to take longer to reach the floor than the last. You grin at your own thought, time here doesn't pass, it drips. Welcome to the stone clock, where the second hand is water. Joke 1, you've invented the worst weather app, it's raining. Your hands reach for the reed bundle because doing something beats listening to thunder count your fears. Yesterday's strap sling kept your breakfast from falling apart, today you braid for company. You split a reed with the flake, thumb dragging a clean seam, then twist it back on itself until fibers remember the spiral. You add a second strip, then a third, rolling them against your thigh, changing hands, letting rhythm form. Cord hums into being. It's small, quiet sorcery, making strength from threads. Mainstream fact while you roll, archaeologists have found twisted plant fibers at sites tens of thousands of years old, at least one Neanderthal scrape in France showing a tiny 3-ply cord. Proof that weaving minds were at work long before cities. The idea that rope is older than pottery always makes you smile. You can bind the world before you can boil it. Historians still argue whether people hunkered in caves like yours seasonally, storm shelters, ritual theaters, stopovers, or whether some bands made them true homes for long stretches. You can only say this, when rain pins you down, a cave feels like both prison and sanctuary, exactly as promised. You measure cordage against your forearm, not measure again. The fire steadies, hot enough now to toast the air around it. Smoke curls lazily and collects against the ceiling. The storm's reverberation becomes less threatening. More like a giant animal sleeping outside. You let your jaw unclench, a bright crack tears the sky. The thunder that follows snaps the cave's silence in half, and a trickle of water leaps from a seam above, expanding your indoor river network by one more fretful stream. You shuffle your stones around the hearth, building a low wall to keep the flame from sputtering out. That wall, your fur, the cord taking shape, little proofs that your hands can argue with chaos. Quirky tidbit to pass the time, people once chewed birch bark pitch to soften it into glue, leaving tooth marks that archaeologists in northern Europe have found thousands of years later, ancient chewing gum with DNA stuck inside. You have no pitch today, but the thought makes you snort. If anyone someday analyses your life, what will they find? A smudge of soot shaped like your hand and a mat woven during a loud afternoon. Congratulations, you're curating your own museum of boredom. Joke 2, admission is 1 grub, no refunds. You shift to plaiting a flat mat, over, under, wide enough for a sleeping pad, narrow enough to finish before your patience dissolves. The reed edges squeak against one another with a sound like gentle sand. Your fingers memorize the pattern, your mind wanders into its slower, softer gear. You think of the handprints deeper inside, the spirals cut into stone. This, too, is a spiral, twist, fold, repeat, a dance of fibers that holds. Somewhere beyond these hills and years from now there will be baskets so tight they carry water, nets that sip fish from rivers, and sacks that hoard seeds. Basketry is older than most stories we tell about ourselves. Wind funnels into the cave mouth and smears the rain sideways. The entry threshold shines like polished obsidian. You are glad you pulled the honey higher. You check the sling of cattail strips drying by the fire, turn them, coax their stiffness toward pliancy. Cattail fluff, you remember, makes a serviceable tinder and a ridiculous pillow. Last night's attempt left seeds gently exploding under your ear whenever you exhaled. Joke 3, luxury mattress review, too soft, also airborne. You pause your weaving and sip from the stalactite bowl, now brimming with storm-gifted water. That bowl has never looked so smug. You lift it higher into the drip's path, mouth curving. Caves have reputations for cold constancy, their temperatures hovering near the average of the outside year. They are nature's cellars and sanctuaries. Mainstream fact, in many deep caverns the air steadies around a single digit or early teens Celsius, a kindness in both winter and summer. Your cave is shallower, moodier, but today it proves the rule. The storm yells, and the rock answers in a measured voice. Thought dares to wander further. If someone asked you what the storm means, could you say? A cleansing? A threat? A story the sky tells the ground so the ground doesn't forget? Historians still argue whether thunder and lightning seeded myth first or ritual first. Whether fear or wonder took the lead. You feel both. You remember the first night you watched lightning throw blue bones across the clouds and thought the sky was cracking open to drop something bright and new into your lap. Nothing fell but water, and yet you woke changed. The mat grows. Your wrists ache pleasantly, your shoulders loosen. You picture laying this on the floor later, a small island between your ribs and the cold stone. The idea gathers warmth around it, like a candle cupped against wind. When you return to your cord, you splice in a new strand without breaking the twist, a tiny triumph that would impress precisely 2 audiences, your future self and any basket-obsessed archaeologist who happens to time travel into your living room. A lull settles. The rain backs off to a steady thread count. Your ears begin to hear other sounds again, the click of beetle feet near the wall, the sigh of your cloak when you shift, the soft sigh of steam where a drip meets a hot stone. You feed the fire one last stick and watch resin bubble at the cut, smoke carrying the clean, sweet edge of pine. Your cut cheek, smeared with sap earlier, feels less angry. Tree medicine keeps its promises. You lean your head back and let your eyes half close. The cave ceiling is a night sky in reverse, constellations of mineral blisters, little domes collecting the storm one bead at a time. If you squint, the droplets seem to slow down as they swell. As if the cave is briefly teaching them patience before letting gravity take them home. That's what this day becomes, a class in patience, taught by water and stone, graded by whether your fire survives until night. Outside, the thunder rehearses a final speech, then grows shy. The rain's voice slides into whisper. Air cools, sweet with petrichor, the earthy perfume of plant oils and soil bacteria, the world's own after-shower cologne. You breathe deeper, the scent settling the last jitters in your chest. Your mat is nearly wide enough for shoulder blades, your cord coil has weight now, the kind of simple wealth you feel in your palm like a promise. You smile into the dimness and mutter. Trapped, but not stuck. The cave gives no opinion. It just drips, and you just breathe, and in the long beat between thunder and silence, time stops trying to outrun you and sits down beside you, patient as a reed in your hands. You sense it before you see it, the way the light at the threshold tightens, the way the cave's breath shifts from damp and neutral to something alert. Your fingers stop mid-plate on the reed mat, the cord goes slack across your knee. Outside, the rain has fallen into a tired whisper, but the mouth of the cave suddenly has a visitor, a shadow that isn't cloud or tree or a trick of your nerves. You freeze, spine long, breath thin, as if stillness could make you invisible. The silhouette holds. Not a boulder, it wavers. The storm leaves everything wanting, wolves leaner, deer wary, people bold or desperate, and the threshold is where those wants come to check their chances. Your eyes run the quick math you've learned the hard way, forward-facing eyes mean predator. Side-set eyes mean prey, and the wrong guess decides whether you sleep or don't. You edge your body so the firelight is behind you and small, banking the flames with a careful hand. You do not want to shine like a beacon, you want to be a rumor. A smell reaches you, wet animal, old leaf litter, a thread of musk like damp fur warmed by a sprint. Then another scent threads it, smoke, yours, which has crept out into the rain and written your address on the air. You pull the new cloak close and slide your flint flake into your palm. Your welcome mat was supposed to be for your ribs, suddenly it has a job title. Welcome, as in, stay where I can watch you. The shadow steps, gravel clicks. The shape narrows, broadens, then stills. If it has antlers, the points are shy, if it has a muzzle, it is careful with it. You listen past your heartbeat and hear the delicate pat of raindrops on hide. You lift your free hand, palm outward, an instinctive gesture you invented this morning while talking to smoke. We are closed due to weather, you whisper, because jokes are courage disguised as customer service. Joke 1 logged. You steady yourself with a plain fact, caves are not just for humans. Archaeologists keep finding the bones and bedding pits of cave bears in shelters like this, whole rooms scribbled with claw marks where big bodies once turned and dreamed. Hyenas also used caves as dens, their gnawed bone piles once misread as human trash before tooth-mark forensics improved. Quirky tidbit while you breathe, hyena droppings can fossilize into chalk-white pellets, coprolites, that sometimes pepper cave floors like a very odd snowfall. You picture the landlord committee, bear, hyena, human, arguing over rent with claws and teeth. The committee does not vote, the committee eats, the shape tilts its head. Two glints flare and fade, as if turning caught a slice of gray light. Eyes. They sit forward enough to knot your stomach and yet not so close that you abandon hope. A wolf would drift lower, test the air from an angle, a deer would jitter sideways, wide-eyed, ready to bound. This visitor holds itself like something that has not decided what you are. You know that feeling. You have not decided what it is, you think of other visitors you have never met, the kind with hands like yours and brows shaped differently, cousins threaded into your blood. The storm could have pushed another small band under the same ridge, the valley holds enough hunger for everyone. Historians still argue whether meetings like those, us and the not quite us, were mostly barter or mostly bruises. Whether stories or scars traveled farther afterward. You picture exchange at the lip of a cave, a better twisted cord for a blunt spearhead, a nod that means we go left, you go right, and everyone tries not to look like dinner. Your fingers find the honey tucked high in its moss jacket. You break off a little comb, not enough to mourn, and set it on a flat stone just inside the line where rain darkens rock. It is a ridiculous offering and a practical one. Everything alive votes honey yes. You place 3 hazelnuts beside it, an altar to sugar and indecision, then back 2 steps, hands open, the flake visible but low, a soft huff rides the rain. The visitor's front half ghosts into view, and for a moment you meet the suggestion of a face, sleek, wet, narrower than a bear, broader than a fox. Not a child, not a doe. The eyes catch firelight again. They reflect back a patient pair of coals. You do not blink. The creature, wolf, dog, something between names, takes a single step onto stone, places weight carefully as if stone might protest, and inhales the world you have touched. The honey goes first. A pink tongue tests the edge, then laps, then commits. Bees will forgive you, your heart will not forgive starving. The nuts roll, tappity-tap, and are ignored. Of course. You imagine a future where you explain to someone, yes, I bribed the storm's shadow with dessert. They will nod as if that is obviously how diplomacy begins. Quirky side note from a different century you can't see, people will sometimes toss sweets to wild neighbors, foxes, martins, even bold birds, as if drafting tiny peace treaties in sugar. The animal doesn't cross the darker line of wet stone. It eats, lifts its head, and considers you with the calm of a judge who has seen many versions of the same case. You slowly tilt your head toward the wall where your handprint smears in soot. Friend? You murmur, and the word feels both gigantic and fragile. It blinks, snorts a raindrop from its nose, and takes one bare step closer, then stops and angles its body in that slanted way of wild things that says, I can leave in half a heartbeat. You nod as if you both signed the same contract. Another thread of knowledge tugs at you, small but warm, in graves many thousands of years old, dogs lie buried with humans, sometimes with ornaments, sometimes with bones healed from injuries only patience could mend. First domesticate, some say. First mirror, others add. You do not call what stands at your threshold a dog. You call it possibility shaped like an animal. And possibility knows better than to trust first drafts. You keep the fire quiet. You keep your laughter smaller. Joke 2 breathes out anyway, this is fine. I'm auditioning for Roommate, Cave Edition. Utilities included, snacks negotiable. Your mouth wants to grin, your jaw warns against teeth. You settle for a soft breath. The animal sniffs where your foot rested moments ago, tracing your history by nose. You have learned to do something similar with tracks and ash and little chips of flint, reading days like pages left out in the weather. Your mat lies to your left, half finished, a braid paused mid-sentence. You lift it with 2 fingers and spread a corner near the offering, a gesture you cannot explain even to yourself. Welcome, or boundary, or simply something to do with your hands while your heart rehearses not bolting. Lightning far off lifts the clouds from within like an ember being blown on, and the cave flashes white for the briefest breath. In that camera-still instant you see the visitor more clearly, narrow waist. Heavy chest fur clumped by rain, a tail that hangs in a question mark undecided between wag and warn. You think, hunter. You think, hungry. You think, also cold. You and the shadow are the same sentence with different punctuation, the light fades, the afterimage swims and settles. The animal steps back to the very lip, glances over its shoulder toward the trees, and then lays something down. You blink, unsure, then lean forward. It is nothing you would have recognized a year ago, a twist of grass looped once, then again, clumsy as your first chord, damp and flattened by travel in a mouth. Gift or accident? You place your flake on your thigh and extend your empty hand, palm low. The animal watches, breath fogging, then flicks an ear and touches the loop with its nose as if to say, there. Joke 3 tiptoes in because fear gives it permission. Great, I get a housewarming present and it's wet landscaping. You lay the grass loop beside the nuts and slide the mat a finger's width closer to the entrance, not daring more. Your hands shake the way reeds shiver when the river thinks too loudly. You let them. Shaking is allowed. Outside, the last rain threads itself into silence. The visitor licks a final bright trace from the stone, squints at your small fire as if memorizing its size, and then turns. Muscles gather and release, paws make no sound you can hear over your own pulse. The shadow thins, breaks into brush, and is gone, leaving you with a mouth that tastes like metal and honey and a cave that seems an inch wider than it was. You stand at the threshold but not in it, the rule you have made for yourself. You do not invite what you cannot yet understand. Behind you the handprints keep their calm shapes. Before you the world wipes its face with a gray sleeve and gets on with being. You pick up the grass loop. Press its dampness between your fingers, and set it on the niche above the hearth beside the honey's moss. Artifact 1, Artifact 2. If some distant scholar ever crawls in here and squints at these, they will make a beautiful mistake about your life, and you would forgive them, because you are making beautiful mistakes in real time. You sit, you breathe, you feed the fire one slim stick. The reed mat waits for your hands to resume the sentence. When they do, the pattern picks up as if it had only paused to see who was knocking. You sit with the damp grass loop on the niche until your hands stop shaking, and then you do the thing that keeps fear from nesting, you give the day a job. The rain thins to thread, the air smells rinsed, a clean slate that invites a line of charcoal. You check the fire, roll a coal into a cup of bark ash to slow its hunger, and choose a branch with resin still gummy near the broken knots. Your cord, twisted while thunder auditioned for deity, binds a small wad of dry grass to the tip. You lean in, the coal kisses the bundle, and a bloom of orange answers back. A torch is only a stick that believes in light. You lift it and feel your courage lengthen by exactly the length of the flame. Dusk waits outside, bruised but calming. Wind dragged the storm away and left a hush with edges. You step to the threshold, pause where the shadow had stood, and set 2 hazelnuts on the lip like punctuation. The honey stays in its moss jacket, diplomacy can resume tomorrow. For now, your stomach votes action, and the vote is unanimous. You study the slope the way a fox reads. Water carved a shallow runnel down valley, brush crowds it on either side. If you were small and edible, you would use that gap to travel. You angle downwind so your smoke trails ahead of you and to the right, where the brush pinches. It is not a big plan. It is, however, bigger than sitting in the dark thinking about sitting in the dark. Joke 1, your strategy document reads, wave fire gently, ask dinner to panic. The torch burbles sap and throws moth-sized sparks that die before they can start rumors. You carry a second stick in your left hand, unlit for now, insurance against clumsiness. Your feet memorize a quiet rhythm, heel-toe among leaf litter that still holds the rain's weight. The world is all soft noises, beaded drops slipping from oak to fern, the far-off 2-note call of a thrush, your breath filing its own report. At the runnel, you squat. The bank is poached where something leapt it recently, fresh mud remembers feet. You touch the print and come away with a cooling story. Hare, perhaps. You move 10 paces along, where bramble makes a curtain, and brush the torch's tongue through dead grass. Not enough to catch, just enough to smoke. The silver-gray stream rises, thicker than your nerves, and slinks under the leaves. Smoke is more patient than flame, it finds hollows the way worry finds quiet minds. You wave carefully, feeding the smolder with breath. The smell is tart, old grass and pine pitch. Your eyes sting, but you hold your ground and count backward from 30 because numbers make a soft ladder out of suspense. On 23, the bramble twitches, and a brown streak splits the air. You pivot, sweep the torch low, and the hare jukes away from the bright and toward the runnel, exactly where the ground pinches. You do not sprint. You move like someone who has tripped before and learned. The hare sides along the bank, commits to the gap, and you drop the unlit stick in front of it and slap it with the lit torch's belly. Fire doesn't touch, but glare does what claws cannot, it suggests consequences. The hare veers, overcorrects, hits an island of slick mud, and tumbles just long enough for your hand to land. The world becomes thump, twist, breath. Life is a hinge. You know the hinge's etiquette and keep it swift. The silence afterward is the kind that has respect folded into it. You sit back, chest working, torch angled safely away. Your hands are a map of the moment: mud, one hair caught in a knuckle crease, a tremor you let have its tremor. You whisper, "Thank you," because saying it makes you the person you want to be. Mainstream fact: to steady your shaking, people across continents have long used fire drives, small, deliberate burns or smudges to funnel animals where hunters can predict them. Aboriginal Australians practiced finely tuned mosaic burning, fire stick farming, creating a patchwork of new growth that attracted game and lowered the risk of catastrophic wildfire. In other places, groups used smoke to flush rabbits from warrens or to push deer across narrow fords. Historians still argue whether Pleistocene landscapes showing frequent burn layers were mostly the work of lightning or of human hands learning to write with flame. You feel the argument in your palm: intention sits there like a coal you could pocket. Quirky tidbit drifting on the edge of your torchlight: some travelers carried a smoldering piece of tinder fungus, amadou, inside bark or a little leather pouch, so an ember could ride with them for hours, even days. A man found in an alpine glacier, far off in your unimaginable future, will be discovered with such fungus and birch polypore in his kit, a time capsule of practical magic. You glance at your bark ash coal and nod like you invented the idea. You work quickly. The hare's hide is thin and forgiving, your flint flake minds its manners and does what it is told. You save more than meat: sinew becomes a future stitch, hide becomes a pouch, bone becomes an awl or a long needle if patience cooperates. You leave the offal under a log far from the cave, an offering to the committee of wild mouths who render this valley's contracts enforceable. Joke 2, payment accepted in guts and gratitude. Dusk slants deeper. Your torch will not last forever: resin gives its bright, then sulks to smoke. You've carried 3 dry cones in your wrap. You crush one underfoot, smear the sap on the torch's head, and coax new flame with the coal you banked in ash. The torch flares, surprised and pleased. Fire is a child who loves attention and chores only if they look like games. You examine the gap again. Your smoke trick may work twice. You shift 4 paces, feed a scrap of cattail fluff into the bramble's brown underlayer, and tickle it with ember. Fluff blooms to light, then to sighing smoke. You back up, angle the torch like a shepherd's crook, and wait. Another rustle, a quick body testing options, and you play the same bright suggestion: not here, there. This time the body that bursts through is smaller, a quail with wing beats like a deck of cards being riffled. It rockets past your ear, and you laugh because the air slaps your cheek with its exit. Dinner declines your invitation. Fair, the runnel goes quiet again, your laughter fading to a grin you feel in your ribs. The lesson land writes on your skin is simple: flame is a verb, not a pet. You return your attention to what you have, not what sprinted away. The hare is enough. Enough is a word that keeps you gentle, as you climb back toward the cave, torch ahead and meat slung low, the valley airs out its evening. Frogs rehearse short poems from the ditch, a bat's first scribble stitches the space above the trees. You step where stone holds and avoid the slick green invitations. The cave's mouth appears as a darker dark, the kind you can tell apart now as easily as you can tell your breath from the winds. Inside, you nurse the hearth higher, a careful arithmetic with twigs and patience. The reed mat welcomes your knees. The handprints hold their discipline on the wall. You spit a wordless thanks into the fire's orange, set the meat to roast on a forked stick, and tilt your head to listen for paws that do not come. Perhaps the visitor is full of vole and rain, perhaps it is full of you, in the way a thought fills a head and lingers. You turn the spit. Fat beads, hisses, blisters, then goes quiet. The smell is strong and honest. You think of those who use spears to face animals far larger than this, wooden weapons from Skåningen, long and balanced like giant javelins, proof that even hundreds of thousands of years ago people stood their ground with planning and nerve. You do not hunt aurochs tonight. You hunt a small life and try to deserve it. The meat yields when you test it, and you let yourself eat slowly, because speed is for running and panic, not for gratitude. Joke 3 arrives soft, chef special, smoked hare a la weather, pairs well with vintage stalactite. You sip from the patient bowl, grin with your mouth full, and feel your shoulders drop. Historians still argue whether early fire use was more accident than art. You sit with your reed mat, your bark ash coal, your careful torch, and think, sometimes an accident is just a skill with bad PR at the beginning. You fan the embers to a low, steady glow, bank them with ash, and let your eyes adjust to the room you have made: stone, warmth, a small curve of satiety drawing its circle around you. The fire slouches into evening, embers pulsing like a heartbeat, and you let the meat settle in your stomach with the heaviness of a stone you're glad to carry. Outside, night deepens, pressing at the cave's threshold like ink spilled across paper. Darkness here is not the cozy dim of candlelit rooms, it is thick, unblinking, a presence that owns the valley. The moment the sun hides its face, you pull your fur closer, tucking it beneath your chin. The cloak still smells of smoke and musk, but now it feels more like a companion than a costume. The hare's fat glistens on your fingers, so you rub it into the seams of your new cordage, as if to proof it against time. Even scraps can serve double duty. Still, the shadows at the mouth of the cave reach in, long and steady, and your thoughts start to play tricks. Every rustle outside sounds personal. A branch snapping under due heavy weight becomes a wolf choosing between paths. A gust of wind against brush is suddenly the hiss of scales. You shake your head, laugh under your breath. Joke 1, congratulations, brain, you've turned night into surround sound horror. You add a stick to the fire, then another. Flame blooms, and shadows scatter like guilty conspirators. Fire is your only lock, the only curtain you can draw. Mainstream fact to soothe your jitters: in many excavated caves, archaeologists find concentrated layers of ash near entrances. Evidence that hearths were placed specifically to deter animals. Fire was both kitchen and fence, alarm system and comforter. Historians still argue whether the flicker of firelight on cave walls was deliberately used to animate art, those painted horses and bison seeming to gallop under torchlight, or whether that dancing effect was just a byproduct noticed later. You stare at your own walls, soot smudges and spirals trembling with every flame, and think both could be true. A new sound, low, rhythmic, like someone dragging a hand across a drum. You hold your breath until you realize, it's just an owl. Its call drops into the valley, solemn and patient. The night is busy with watchers, you are only one of them. Still, your chest tightens, you think of how the darkness would have ruled lives before fire. Imagine a world where every sundown meant retreat, a surrender to claws and teeth. The quirky tidbit: evidence from early camps shows that even before permanent fire keeping, people sometimes used glowing fungus, foxfire, bioluminescent wood, as faint night lamps to navigate safely. You smirk at the thought: proto-nightlights, courtesy of mushrooms. The cave answers back with creaks, drips, and sighs. You feed the embers carefully, keeping them small but bright enough to cast the protective glow. You arrange a ring of smoldering sticks across the entrance, like teeth turned outward. It won't stop a bear, but it might make a wolf think twice. You whisper to the fire, as if it understands: guard duty's yours tonight. Joke 2, you're promoted, with no pay raise. Your back presses against the wall, and you watch shadows dance. At first, shapes stay familiar: branches, your sling, the jut of rock. But soon, the imagination paints over them. A smear of soot becomes a crouching figure. A reed bundle becomes antlers. Even the spirals etched into stone seem to spin when you squint. You know you're awake, but dreams creep sideways into your vision. This is the hour when memory sneaks in, too. You recall the visitor at the cave mouth earlier, the wet shadow with patient eyes. For a moment, you wonder if it lingers outside now, just beyond the fire's honesty. You imagine the grass loop it left, damp and clumsy, still warm with its breath. Gift or warning? Both? Historians still argue whether the first bonds between humans and wolves sparked from shared fires or shared hunger. You picture that silhouette again and smile faintly. Joke 3, if it comes back, I'll charge half the rent. Fair's fair. Your eyes grow heavier. Darkness presses harder against the stone, but inside, fire and fur and your own stubbornness push back. The night will always be bigger than you, but tonight you've carved out a circle it can't quite swallow. Your chin dips, then jerks upright, the familiar bob of exhaustion tugging at the string of wakefulness. The fire's glow has gentled into a steady amber, low enough to paint the cave walls with trembling shadows. You lean your head against stone, cloak snug at your shoulders, and let the eyelids slide heavier. Dreams arrive like intruders that pretend they were invited. First it's fire, just the crackle, magnified, louder than thunder. Then faces appear in the flicker, not yours, not now. Hunters wrapped in fur, paint streaking their arms, their eyes burning with focus. They raise spears, mouths moving with chants you almost understand but can't repeat. It feels less like your imagination and more like something buried under your skin. Rising. DNA as bedtime storyteller, the firelight seems to twist the markings on the wall. Spirals glow, lines move, handprints stretch their fingers. You see horses galloping, mammoths trumpeting, aurochs lowering their horns. It's the same trick archaeologists talk about, the way overlapping animal legs painted in caves flicker under light so they seem to move. Mainstream fact, in places like Chauvet and Lascaux, torches turn still art into animation, the world's first cinema. Historians still argue whether this was deliberate magic or a happy accident noticed during late-night vigils like yours. The smoke curls into shapes that resemble people you've never met. You hear them telling stories in a tongue that feels like yours even though you don't know the words. A woman kneels near the fire, smearing ochre across a child's forehead. A man hums low, beating rhythm on a hollow log. Shadows bend into wolves that sit not as threats but as guardians at the circle's edge. You realize you are both inside the story and watching it, as if the cave has folded time into layers. Joke 1 slips in even here, so apparently my Netflix subscription is just. Firelight on stone. No commercials though. Your body relaxes deeper. The hare's warmth in your belly turns heavy, anchoring you against the pull of sleep. The reed mat under your hip gives slightly, reeds squeaking faintly when you shift. Your hand drifts across the cord, and for a second you feel the tug of generations, hands weaving nets, cradles, traps, a sudden image, the shadow visitor from earlier, the wet eyes in the rain. In dreamlight it sits closer, unafraid, and in its jaws it holds the same grass loop but woven neater, deliberate. You reach for it, and as you do, the fire flares and every ancestor in the dream circle turns their gaze on you. Their faces blur, but their eyes share one message: keep going. Quirky tidbit slides in as the dream reshuffles. Some graves have been found with red ochre sprinkled over the bodies, suggesting that paint was more than decoration, it was protection, a cloak for the journey beyond. Was it ritual? Or simply a tradition that gathered meaning over time? Historians still argue, but your dream self believes it. Color is power. You wake with faint smears of ochre on your mind, even though your fingers are only streaked with soot. The fire pops, jerking you half awake. For a moment you're not sure where you are, the dream still clings like spider silk. The shadows on the wall don't move now, but you can still see the echo of galloping legs. You laugh softly, rubbing your eyes. Joke 2, my cave just pulled off a feature-length film with zero budget. You stretch, bones clicking, and lean back again. The fire hums low, steady. The smell of ash and fur fills your nose. Sleep pulls harder now, but you don't resist. The cave cradles you like a reluctant guardian. Outside, the night continues its watch. Inside, you drift, as you slide deeper into dream, voices return, softer this time. You see migrations, endless feet across tundra. You see fires lit on cliffs to signal others. You see children carried, songs traded, wounds bound. Your mind isn't inventing, it's remembering for you. Ancestors murmuring lullabies in your marrow, joke 3 passes like a whisper as you drift. If this is what my DNA dreams about every night, no wonder I'm tired in the mornings. The fire sighs, the cave breathes, and you finally let go, surrendering to the long night's tapestry of dream and ember. You wake without quite meaning to, as if the moon spoke your name and your eyelids understood. The cave is a dim bowl of amber and hush, the reed mat whispering under your shoulder when you roll to sit. Outside, the storm's wet breath has dried into a cool that smells of fern and stone. You listen, the way you listened to thunder earlier, but this sound is human soft, murmurs carried thinly, a scuff on grit, a laugh that someone tried and failed to swallow. You stand and bank the coals so the glow stays humble. Your hands find offerings without thinking, 2 hazelnuts, a narrow strip of hair saved from earlier, a thumb of honey wrapped in moss. For luck, you touch the grass loop left by the rain shadow visitor. Then tuck it into the niche as if asking the cave to keep an eye on you. Your feet learn moonlight again, the world beyond the entrance is rinsed silver. A slow river of pale spills between trunks, turning every wet leaf into a careful mirror. You step wide of the squeaky places, palms open and low, your body practicing a grammar you hope strangers can read. I am not here to take your bones apart. A faint glow winks 2 terraces down the slope. It is not lightning. It is a fire no bigger than a bowl, and around it 3 shapes sit in a crescent, their faces catching and losing light as they turn to one another. You stop where brush thickens, say nothing, and place your gifts on a flat stone. Then you do the oldest introduction you know, you cough. Not loud, just a stone cleared from a throat. 3 heads tilt. 1 figure lifts an arm, palm like yours, and answers with the same sound, a polite little thunderless rumble. You exhale. Protocol achieved. Joke 1, you have just attended the first international summit on Please Don't Panic, minutes 1 and 2 accomplished. You approach sideways so no one mistakes motion for charge, and you crouch across a polite pool of shadow from their fire. The oldest of the 3, gray streaking the hair, a scar that has healed honest across a forearm, touches chest and then earth. A naming that is more place than person. You mirror it, touching your sternum, then the damp grit. Names can wait, shared ground is faster, they notice the stone with your offerings. The child, small, hair braided with a red smear of ochre at the part, reaches first, then looks back for permission. The older woman nods and the child grins at you with a missing tooth that makes the grin better. Honey goes from stone to fingertip to tongue to eyes going wide with unambiguous approval. You move the strip of hair with 2 fingers closer to their fire. There's a quick negotiation in glances, and then the older man, scar arm, spears it with a sharpened stick and holds it over coals. Laughter decompresses the air. It's the same note you heard carried up to your cave, now nearer, warmer. Someone passes you a small, careful thing, a pendant made from a pierced shell, smooth as river talk. Inland shells like this mean paths that go farther than the valley, they mean friends of friends and the trade of small, shimmering promises. Mainstream fact, archaeologists keep finding marine shells far from any coast in Paleolithic camps, proof of exchange networks that braided groups together over long distances. You rub the pendant between thumb and forefinger until the moon turns it pearly. You pass your reed cord in return, 3-ply strong, the splice is clean. The older woman tests its twist, nods, craft recognizes craft, and ties the shell to it before looping it back to you, as if to say, we're what we both made. The child leans in, fascinated by your soot-streaked cheek, and then, conspiratorially, scratches a quick spiral in the dust between you, head cocked at the cave school teacher who lives in your chest now. You draw a spiral around theirs, not bigger, just neighboring. Something like a game invents itself, their spiral, your spiral, a line between. We are here and also here, and between us there is a path, voices thicken into gestures. Scar arm mimes a herd, fingertips walking, older woman slices palm to say river, child presses hands to cheeks and puffs, meaning the wind wanted to play too much today. You recognize storm ruined the plan in any dialect. You point fingertip toward your cave mouth and puff out your own cheeks in reply. They laugh again. The child tries to look serious and fails. You offer hazelnuts, 2 for them, 1 for you. They answer with a twist of dried something that smells of shore, fish, thin and chewy, a taste from a map you haven't visited yet. You trade small luxuries like neighbors who have been neighbors longer than they knew. Quirky tidbit to tuck in your pocket. Some think that red ochre mixed with animal fat wasn't only decoration but also insect repellent and sun guard. The older woman's ochre-streaked hands smell faintly of tallow, and the mosquitoes seem to have read the memo. After food comes the softer business of night. Scar arm pulls a hollow bird bone from a wrap and blows gently. A high, tentative note steps into the air and looks around to see if it is welcome. It is. Another note joins it. Then a string of them stitches a pattern that makes the fire seem braver. You have no word for flute, but you have breath and bones and the wonder that something as small as hollow can carry a song. You think of caves far away where bone flutes older than your counting will be found. You think of a different cave where a flute will be argued over for years. Historians still argue whether a famous bear bone from Divj Babe was an instrument or just a hyena's dinner with inconvenient holes. You let the debate pass like a cloud and listen to the unarguable. Here and now, music exists. They ask with eyebrows and palms if you live alone. You tip your head, hold up your hand with one finger, then open it to show the spread, sometimes one, sometimes more, a way of saying I am by myself until I'm not. You tap your niche side chest where the grass loop was, and trace a quick oval in the dirt. The older woman smiles in the way of people who know that not all company has hands. The talk without words bends, inevitably, toward rules. The older woman draws a rough circle and places nuts like people. Scar arm moves 2 nuts away, then pushes one back, then taps the fish and moves it to the center. The child pretends to snatch everything and then collapses laughing when both adults glare theatrically. You get it, share, but don't be foolish, protect, but don't hoard, play, but don't break the only bowl. Historians still argue whether it was cooperation or competition that kept our kind alive, whether we outran others with sharp elbows or outlasted winters with wide hands. Sitting here, you feel how the answer can be a fire with both heat and light. You contribute the day's comedy, the cattail fluff pillow fiasco. You puff imaginary seeds around your head and swat at your own phantom hair until the child is cackling on their back and the older woman wipes happy tears with the heel of her hand. Joke 2 registers with the committee as excellent, would laugh again. You add the story of the stalactite bull's smugness during the storm, 3 approving nods. You mime bargaining with the hare, you run, I chase, we both complain, and even Scar arms scar wrinkles with a grin. They answer with a small tragedy turned lesson. The older woman shows a healed finger missing its tip and mimes a trap snapping, then she pats her cord belt and shakes her head. Better knots, better checks. You lift your own cord, show the splice again, and promise the idea a home. In the glow and the small music, knowledge passes like bread. The child grows heavy-eyed and folds against the older woman's side. Scar arm stands with the softness of someone who has learned to stand without alarming anyone. He pantomimes the path to a spring with both hands and then gestures toward your cave, an invitation or an exchange of information, you decide later. For now, he points at the moon. Then at the fire, meaning, this is enough light for tonight. You rise when they do. A last piece of honey goes to the child's cheek, a last cracked nut halves itself neatly and becomes yours. Joke 3 is small and true. You pat the reed mat rolled under your arm and whisper, open plan seating was a mistake, guest chairs next season. The older woman doesn't know the words, but she understands the tone. She taps the mat with 2 fingers and nods as if endorsing the design upgrade. In slow motions that match the moon's pace, you step back to the brush while they bank their coals. Palms lift once more, a goodnight you can feel in your ribs. On the way up the slope, the grass sighs under your feet and the trees let their black lace shake a little. Your cave takes you back as if you only stepped out to see what the moon was serving. Inside, the spirals hold still, the handprints keep their promises, and the ember you banked earlier is right where you left it, stubborn and warm, like the idea that you are not alone. You settle the shell on your chest, the cord snug behind your neck, and let the night's new music hum along your breath. Whatever the scholars in some future will argue, tonight cooperation tastes like honey and laughter and a song blown down a hollow bone. You ease your shoulders, stretch your legs toward the small, bright fence of fire, and watch the cave trade silver for orange, orange for sleep. Morning sidles in without asking permission, a thin gray poured across stone. You wake to the ember's slow blink and the cold that knows your name. The shell pendant rests against your collarbone, warm from your skin. When you step to the mouth of the cave, the world smells rinsed and cautious. Downslope, where last night's small fire had stitched 3 faces together, voices fray instead of braid. Not laughter. Not yet. You listen the way a hare listens, all at once, figures move where the trees thin, 5 this time, not 3. Scar arms stand square, older woman slightly in front, the child braced behind their legs with the seriousness children borrow when adults forget theirs. Opposite them, 2 strangers in ragged wraps move like people who have eaten the weather for days. Their spears angle low, not thrown, not lowered. Nothing has been decided, which is exactly when things decide themselves if you don't help them. You slide along the brush's dark seam, palms open, the way you introduced yourself to the moon. Your reed cord peeks from your wrap, you let it. You cough once, the small, civil thunder. Heads turn. Scar arm flicks you a quick palm, good, then returns his attention to the newcomers. Their eyes hop to your shell, up to your face, back to the shell. You can almost hear the math. Cave food fire we are tired equals something must give. The ground between both groups is honest about the problem. The little stream that glinted last night is a trickle today, hobbled by roots and yesterday's drought before the storm. And your cave, tucked into the ridge, is the only dry throat the hill opens within easy reach. Water. Roof. Fire. You could draw the equation in ash, but everyone already knows it across their teeth. You step into the open with a slow hinge of knees and set a nut and a thumb of honey on a flat stone, then one more nut, making a neat, silly little altar to compromise. Before anyone sharpens an opinion, you murmur, letting the ASMR of sense do the work, breakfast. One of the newcomers, the taller, hair matted into a storm of burrs, snorts, tempted and insulted at once. The other, lean with a long pink scar along the jaw, accepts the nut with a minimal nod and ignores the honey like pretending not to want something makes want smaller. Scar arm tilts his chin the way yesterday's circle tilted during music. Older woman's eyes sit steady as a pot on a well-built hearth. The child has learned not to look delighted by candy while strangers are holding spears. You squat and use a wet twig to draw on the packed grit, a circle for the cave, a line of squiggles for water, a spiral for last night's meeting place. You can't resist the callback, the child's mouth twitches. Then you make a simple map of time, a row of dots, night, 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 tapping one, then the next, then pointing to yourself, to Scar arm, to the newcomers. Your hand says, share the cave by turns, share the spring by turn as well, nobody sleeps wet 2 nights in a row. You add the grass loops oval over the cave drawing and hang 2 fingers in the air, a sign that means, when the loop hangs, this is ours for the night, when it doesn't, yours. Scar watches your finger. Then your face, then the older woman's face. Burrs shifts his spear like a man who keeps sharpness where decisions go. No one speaks, and yet there is too much to hear. your mind flips to the part of the story where bones tell jokes badly. Mainstream fact: in some ancient cemeteries, the Nile Valley at Jebel Sahaba, or a later, farm people pit in Talheim, skeletal stories carry healed skull fractures and embedded points, proof that hunger sometimes argued with sharp objects. Violence isn't a modern invention, it is a bad habit that learned to walk early. Historians still argue whether such scenes were rare storms or a climate, occasional flare-ups among kin, or organized raids about land, water, and pride. You breathe like pouring, slow and long, trying to keep today on the weather side of that argument. You offer the honey to the child, not the men. The older woman's eyes measure the choice. After a beat, she nods. The child touches a fingertip, tastes, and lets the heat of sugar widen their gaze just enough to remind everyone we are made of small joys as well as large necessities. Burza's mouth tightens, then relaxes a shade you wouldn't notice unless you were staring. Which, yes, you are, arguing while hungry, you say softly, is like weaving with wet reeds. Joke 1 earns you the world's tiniest eye roll from the older woman and a sigh from your own ribs. The child smothers a grin into ochre-marked knuckles. Jaskar taps his spear but twice, then points toward your ridge, then flares his fingers open. The cave is the cave. He touches his forearm and mimes shiver. Older woman answers with 2 palms down, calm, then circles one hand over the other, turns. Scararm lifts a bundle of green wood under his arm and holds it out, a peace offering that doubles as a very practical admission. If we're doing turns, everyone will need fuel. Burz eyes the bundle. Then you. He is a man who prefers problems he can stab. You provide the other kind instead, a plan you can live in. The plan gets real in dirt. You mark mornings with short lines, nights with long ones. 3 nights on, 3 nights off. Spring at dawn for the upslope camp, at dusk for the downslope camp. No hunting at the lip of either shelter, no fire drives in the notch where children play. You look at the child when you draw that last line. They nod solemnly like a diplomat promoted to very important business. Quirky tidbit sidles in, trying to cheer your spine. Somewhere far away, in a wet land with patient moss and deeper patience, people will later bury lumps of butter in peat bogs to keep them cool. Bog butter, a pantry buried in a sponge. Some lumps will nap there for centuries and come up pale and ghost-scented. You file that under ideas for future refrigeration and return to the immediate. Keep fat, keep peace, keep warm. Burr steps forward 2 paces, the kind of 2 paces that decides whether knuckles turn to knives. He plants his spear, takes the honey between finger and thumb, and touches it to his tongue as if insult were a flavor he might decide to refuse. Jaskar blows air from his cheeks, then does something you did not predict. He unstrings a thin, tired loop of sinew from his belt and ties it around the flat stone. It is nothing, and it is everything. A sign you can see from the ridge. Today's promise has a handle. Your body loosens by an inch. You touch the grass loop at your neck's niche. Lift it into view, and set it beside the sinew on the stone. 2 odd little wreaths, one wet from last night's animal messenger, one slick from a man who has run out of better currency. Joke 2 helps your hands not shake. Look at us, inventing signage. Next we'll carve occupied like grumpy birds. The child breaks détente by being a child. They pick up your reed cord again, test its twist, then pull their own cord from their waist and compare. A game of who's sturdier breaks out in miniature. Older woman pretends not to smile and fails. Scararm exhales like he's been told the weather will, in fact, pass. Burrs, however, is not done looking for edges. His eyes land on the niche sign, a tiny, smug stash of nuts visible if you know where to stare, and his hand moves toward it with the speed of someone who learned to snatch before he learned to ask. Your body starts without your permission. You step into his path, not close, but enough that your shadow crosses his wrist. In your palm, your flint sits visible and pointed down, an idea, not a threat. Your voice finds the least sharp part of itself. Share is the rule. Not steal. For a beat too long, everything balances on a gnat's ankle. Then Jaskar says something small, a single syllable that sounds like a stone nudged into deeper water. Burrs snorts, yields a half step, and taps the sinuous loop on the stone as if to say, "Fine." Signs then. He returns to his spear, you return your heart to your chest. Mainstream fact circles back like a hawk riding thermals. Plenty of ancient bones show healed breaks, especially in skulls, meaning someone didn't just strike, someone also stayed to feed, to tend, to keep alive what anger would have thrown away. Historians still argue whether compassion scaled with group size or resource slack. You watch Burrs not take the nuts and count that as a very small heal beginning, there are details to finish. You fetch the grass loop from your niche and hang it on a thorn at the path that leads to your cave. The older woman ties a bit of red-smeared cord to the same thorn, and with that, the ridge speaks both languages. Jaskar draws a simple fish in dust near the stream, "Ours there tomorrow," and you nod like a clerk taking excellent minutes on a very old tablet. Joke 3 earns a weary smile from even Burrs, "We'll need a stick for whoever talks out of turn at the next summit. Preferably not a spear." The child, delighted, mimics handing you a twig scepter. You bow with ridiculous gravity. The room, open sky is a kind of room, exhales. When the strangers ghost back toward the lower trees, the valley's green swallows them, and the quiet they leave behind tastes complicated. Scararm looks at your hands, you look at his, you both count your fingers like travelers after a river. Older woman presses the shell at your neck with 2 fingers, a mother's benediction unpossessed by ownership, and then lifts the child with the grunt of someone who will lift again tomorrow. Upslope, the cave waits exactly where caves always wait, patient, impartial, ready to be both cradle and courtroom. You climb, lay the grass loop on its thorn, and sit with your back to the same old wall. Inside, your fire accepts its promotion to border. Outside, the spring keeps speaking its one vowel. Your ribs relax around something heavier than relief and lighter than victory. Hard choices are not a one-time tax. They come around like seasons. Today you chose compromise, pinned it with sinew and grass, and fed it a thimble of honey so it might taste better to everyone later. The cave approves in the only voice it has, drip, drip, steady as law writ by water. Dawn doesn't so much arrive as breathe, one long, even exhale that thins the dark until the cave remembers its colors. You sit up to the small ache of muscles that worked too hard pretending they weren't afraid. The shell rests warm against your sternum, the cord faintly sticky where last night's honey kissed it with diplomacy. Outside, the air is the soft blue of unspoken apologies. You pad to the mouth, glance left to the thorn where 2 signs hang, your grass loop and the stranger's dark sinew, and feel the strange, quiet relief of rules that held while you slept. No voices. No cough that pretends not to be a password. Just birds arguing over who invented morning and a drip keeping minutes from the stalactite bowl. The bowl looks smug, again. Of course it does. It survived the storm, the summit, and your jokes, it has tenure. You drink anyway, because petty bowls still pour water, aftermath is chores. You crouch by the hearth and recircle your stones, returning the little teeth of your fire fence to neatness, as if order itself could bandage a place. Ash lifts in a ghostly puff and lays itself back down. Your fingertip finds a spark and feeds it the smallest reed shaving, coaxing orange until the cave blinks wider. Your breath slows with the flame, inhale as glow gathers, exhale when it steadies, an accidental prayer that needs no words. Only then do you take inventory of the damage you pretended not to count last night, a bramble scratch along your calf. A nick on the pad of your thumb where flint reminded you who's sharper, a crescent burn where the torch leaned a heartbeat too close. None of it dramatic, all of it yours. You wash the scratches with cool cave water and pack the angriest one with moss, choosing the springy, clean kind that feels like forgiving. Quirky sidestep while you work, moss, especially the bog-loving sphagnum kind, has a mild acidity and a talent for drinking. Much later, people will use it in war as a bandage when cloth runs out, and still later, as diapers and wound dressings because it mines leaks like a professional. You don't know the chemistry, you know the comfort when you press green softness to red edges. For the burn, you take a fleck of honey on the back of your nail and smooth it over the shine of hurt. Sweetness for smarting. Mainstream fact: long before bottles and barcodes, humans learned that honey keeps rot's teeth dull, it draws water from bacteria, makes it hard for them to throw parties. Egyptian healers will write honey into their instructions in a world you can't see. You just watch the sting back down and call it good medicine. You hold your hand to the hearth until the dampness on your skin hums into warmth. The cave smells like calm, ash, wet stone, the light ghost of hair fat from last night. You turn the spit once out of habit even though there's nothing left to cook. Habit is part of healing, it reminds the body that normal exists, a quiet audit of your mind follows. You picture Burza's hand pausing over your niche, jaw scars little knot of sinew on the stone, the child's solemn nod at the rule about the notch where children play. You feel where your ribs got tight and where they opened again. Fragility and resilience nest together like birds who tolerate each other out of mutual awe. You are both today, a bruise that walks and a backbone that votes yes. You need new cord, yesterday's weaving ran its sentence to the period. You split a reed with your flake, roll the strips against your thigh until they twine into something that remembers being stronger than a single strand. Twist, lay, splice, twist, lay, splice. The rhythm returns so fast your fingers feel as if they never stopped. This is the part of the story bones often tell when dug up later: healed breaks, fused joints, the quiet arithmetic of care. Somewhere, a long walk from here in both miles and years, archaeologists will lay ancient skeletons on clean tables and read old kindness in them: skulls mended, limbs supported, elders carried. Not because people were saints, but because groups became better at being groups by keeping each other going. Historians still argue whether that care widened with abundance or burned brightest in scarcity, but this morning you vote for tenderness even when cupboards echo, your ear keeps half an eye on the valley. The spring whispers the same vowel it did yesterday. A jay tries to start a fight with its echo and loses. If anyone below is unhappy with last night's treaty, they are quietly unhappy. You'll take it. You bring the reed mat into the light and tug at the places where your patience slipped. Reeds squeak a complaint, you stroke them until they lie flat. Yes, I know, you murmur, open plan seeding was a phase. Joke 1, low and domestic, soothes a prickle behind your eyes you didn't invite. You tuck a strip of fur under the mat's head edge, a pillow upgrade that will not explode into floating seeds at every sigh. Progress. Now with fewer airborne naps, a thin, coin-sized stone catches your attention near the wall, smooth, with a shallow dimple ground into its belly from days of grinding nuts. You thumb its hollow and the motion sends a small, pleasant ache into your forearm. Stone remembers labor like tree rings remember weather. You crack 3 hazelnuts, tap, twist, reward, and stash their meats in a leaf cup high above ant ambition. The shells go into the hearth for a quick roast, the scent warms your mood from the inside. Across many old camps you'd find middens full of these, charred crescents by the handful, the snack night confetti of people who sometimes needed celebration more than reasons. Quiet pulls you deeper. You fetch the fox pelt you've been ignoring because it asks more skill than your fingers had the day they first tried. Today your fingers feel wiser. You pierce neat holes along one edge, listening for the difference between skin and mistake, then ladder them shut with fine sinew. The seam sits polite for once. You grin at it with a relief so specific it's almost a flavor. Joke 2 Lopez in, look at that, fashion you can survive in. Eat your heart out, future runway. While the stitch holds, you reach absently for a lamp you don't yet own. Your mind sketches it anyway, a shallow stone with a cup in its face, a wick of twisted moss, a smear of fat from hare or deer pooling into light you can carry. Mainstream fact: in the deep dark of painted caverns, people did carve such lamps, later noses will sniff their residues and name the fuels: reindeer tallow, marrow's shadow. You tuck the thought away for the night you want the cave to glow without hissing. The handprints behind you look less like ghosts in morning light and more like cousins. You pick a flake of soot from beneath one and smear a smaller, newer palm beside it, yours again, but steadier than yesterday. You do not say anything out loud. The mark says enough, still here. Breakfast is the kind of feast sensible to the small gods of survival: roasted nuts, a sliver of last night's hare crisped to singe, sorrel leaves for a hint of lemon, 3 greedy sips at the bowl. You hold one nut on your tongue and imagine the child's missing tooth. You hear their laugh again and let it push your mouth into a smile that arrives kinder than you expected. When you step to the entrance again, the world has shaken its shoulders into day. You check the thorn signpost, a grass loop for you, a thin loop of sinew for them, and add a small hush of decoration, a single crow feather, barbs still wet shiny from dew, caught on the thorn's second fork. Not an order, not a threat. A bookmark. A promise that when you both turn the page tonight, you'll find your place faster. Your body keeps finding little tests, the way you run a fingertip over a chipped bowl each time you pass it. Stride to the notch and stop where the line you drew says stop. Scan the runnel without imagining teeth in every shadow. Listen to the wind and hear wind, not whispers. You pass them all imperfectly. Imperfect is fine. Imperfect is a plan with room for breath. At midday you strip a branch of bark and twist a handful of thin cords into one thicker line, then tie 2 knots you intend to remember, the kind that release when you tell them to and hold when you don't. The knots sit in your palms like quiet knowledge. You teach them to the fox pelt and to the reed mat, and when both obey, you thank them out loud. Joke 3, congratulations, everyone, promotion to helpful objects. Annual reviews will be held by the stalactite. The cave declines to schedule them, the drip continues at its own pace. The sun climbs, you retreat to the temperate heart of the cavern, where the air stays at its favorite number. Your thigh aches where yesterday's chase kissed it with ground, the moss pad under your calf keeps its small promise. You take off the shell, polish it against fur until it gleams like a thin moon, and thread it back on. Its cool curve sits you inside last night's circle again: bone flute, ochre fingers, the map of spirals in dust. A different cave, far in space and time, will hold a skeleton dusted with flower pollen. It will make headlines and then footnotes. Historians still argue whether the bloom came from mourners' hands or from rodent stashers whose pantries got mistaken for ritual. You do not need their verdict to know that love has always tried to decorate loss. Afternoon unrolls like a quiet rug. You carry water twice without drama, straighten the hearth's teeth one more time, and hang your mat where a lazy draft can pull the damp from its corners. Finally, when the light at the cave mouth thickens into honey again, you sit with your back to the same old wall, listening to your own breath report from the present tense. The valley hears you and does not mind. The cave hears you and answers with that steady drip, which is both lullaby and law. You do not call it peace. Peace sounds like a thing someone could steal. You call it enough, this healed seam, this wise chord. This treaty written in grass and sinew and the taste of sugar on a child's tongue. Enough fits the body better than victory and lasts longer. Enough lets you stand when the light goes gold and prepare to meet twilight with the same stubborn, watchful kindness that brought you through the storm. Twilight slips in like a guest who doesn't knock, brushing pale fingers across the ridge until every tree looks inked rather than leafed. You stand at the cave's lip with your cloak pulled snug, reed cord biting familiar into your neck where the shell pendant rests. The thorn still holds its odd bundle of signals, your grass loop, their sinew strip, the crow feather that insisted on becoming punctuation. All three swish faintly in the cooling breeze. You breathe deep. The evening has that damp, metallic tang that means the storm is still hanging around in memory but no longer in body. Down valley, no fire burns tonight. Perhaps the others have moved on, perhaps they simply learned to keep coals low when treaties are this young. You are relieved and disappointed at once. Loneliness and safety often arrive arm in arm, smirking like brothers. Inside, the hearth grumbles softly as you coax it with pine resin. You spit into the flames, the old, wordless thanks, and watch the smoke write temporary spirals against the stone. The hare's bones lie clean and dry now, you lay them in a shallow crack above the niche. They are not trophies, just reminders that hunger was answered once and can be answered again. You hum at them, half lullaby, half ledger. The cave has become both cradle and tomb. Every drip from the stalactite bowl counts your pulse against time's steady drum. Every soot smear on the wall feels like the unfinished sentence of someone who wanted to be remembered. You press your palm against your own print from yesterday, still faint, already flaking. Even you, not yet gone, are fading. The thought should scare you, but instead it comforts. Impermanence means you belong. You sit with your back to the stone and the reed mat beneath you, fox pelt across your shoulders, cord and knots tidy in your lap. Outside, night gathers its committee of watchers, owls, wolves, winds. Inside, you draw your small circle again with flame and breath, convinced for now it is enough. Joke one wanders out of your mouth before you can stop it. Breaking news, local cave dweller survives another episode. Tune in tomorrow for the thrilling sequel. Mainstream fact to steady you, archaeologists sometimes find caves layered with generations of ash, hearth over hearth, each fire a bookmark in the story of persistence. Some layers are so thick they record centuries of returning, bands who came back because the cave remembered how to hold them. Historians still argue whether people thought of these places as sacred sanctuaries or just convenient shelters, but the ash itself votes for both. You glance at your modest hearth, your soot, your cord, and think, let the ash tell my side later. You eat sparingly, roasted nuts cracked against the grinding stone, a handful of sorrel leaves, water from the smug bowl. You lay one hazelnut in the niche with the grass loop and the shell pendant's twin cord, as if saving a small offering for whichever ancestor is on duty tonight. Quirky tidbit to keep you company. In some later burials, archaeologists find seeds placed beside the dead, tiny promises that food will follow them even where hunger cannot. You rub the nut with your thumb, grin faintly, and whisper, travel snack. Joke 2, delivered directly to ghosts, the fire hums lower, smoke curling like tired thoughts. You stretch your legs, flex your sore calf where moss still cushions the scratch, and let your head rest against stone. Shadows paint your cheek, warm where fire reaches, cool where it doesn't. Darkness thickens, not menacing now but full, a blanket you don't own but are allowed to borrow. Your eyelids get heavy. You imagine the shadow visitor again, the wet-eyed animal who left its grass loop. You picture it curled outside somewhere, for drying, perhaps watching the same stars. You picture Scararm and the older woman with the child, their circle banked, their bone flute resting in silence. Everyone, everywhere, giving themselves over to the same night. Joke 3 drifts with a yawn. If the cave is the cradle and tomb, I'd better not roll over too much or I'll confuse the paperwork. You chuckle softly, half dreaming already. The drip keeps time. The fire keeps guard. The cave keeps you. Now let yourself soften with the story. The cave has finished its lesson for tonight, and the stone no longer presses. It cradles. Imagine the fire not as a guard but as a gentle lantern, glowing warm and steady, each ember a small star fallen close enough to touch. The reed mat under you no longer squeaks, it sighs like grass in summer. The cloak around your shoulders isn't heavy now, it's the weight of safety, tucking you in without asking for thanks. Breathe into the rhythm of that slow drip at the cave's heart. Each drop is one thought leaving your mind. Drip, your shoulders loosen. Drip, your jaw softens. Drip, your eyes grow heavier, as if stone itself were closing them for you. The cave holds you without question, the same way it held those before you, the same way it will hold silence long after you. That is not sadness. It is reassurance. The world is big enough to remember, strong enough to keep you safe in this moment. Imagine the outside night now not as a threat but as velvet stretched across the valley, stitched with small, steady stars. The owl calls once, a soft reminder that someone else keeps watch so you don't have to. The air is cool but kind, brushing your cheek like a parent brushing hair back before sleep. Your hand rests on the soot print you left, and though it will fade, the act of pressing it there lasts longer than you think. You are part of something wide, and wide things do not let you fall. Let the last image be simple: fire's glow, cloak's warmth, the lull of dripping water. Everything else can wait. You are safe. You are home. Sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.